Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Alex Ramirez, and he is the CEO at Cognitops. And we're going to talk about data in the warehouse. I love this topic. I love to talk data and the importance of data. And we're also going to talk a little bit about dashboards and AI, which data drives all of that. So we're going to talk about all those different things, and we're going to hear about the latest with Cognitops as well. I think it's been a few years since
It
Alex was
has, I
on the
think,
podcast
21.
before, right? So
Yeah.
about 4 years. Wow. Okay. All right. So some things maybe have changed in 4 years.
Yeah.
So we're gonna find out about that. So Alex, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good, Kevin. It is great to be here. 4 years later, I'm still bald, still ugly, but still kicking. So yeah, I
Yeah,
remember
yeah. We
I
gave we
remember
gave
that
you four
podcast.
years to grow your hair back, but
I
I
tried, man.
guess it wasn't
Tried.
long enough. No, no.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I appreciate you fitting me in, man. You are the most popular guy in warehousing, and I feel like I'm on a couch in late night TV here, so pretty excited.
Well, maybe one day we'll have that set up and get the couch. We did a little play
Yeah,
on that at ProMat this year, but yeah, that would be a fantastic thing. So
100%.
so we'll see, and we'll make sure we get you on that couch when it's an actual thing. But happy to get you back on here, and definitely happy to be talking to you again. So for people that are not familiar, let's start it off here. Tell us a little bit about Cognitops.
Yeah, so we are an Austin-based software company here in the great country of Texas.
Mm,
And my co-founder and I started it in 2018 after leaving Redworks, then Dematic. And we spent a lot of time on the warehouse floor, Kevin. It's why I look the way I look. There are city miles, but then there are warehouse miles, and if you know, you
yeah,
know, right? So,
I know.
so we weren't in conference rooms, right? We were in the aisles, in the zones, seeing orders drop and waves formed and chaos ensue. And so, over those years, we kept seeing the same thing. It was operators. And when we talk about operators, you're going to see a very
Mm,
empathetic perspective towards those soups, the leads, the managers, the individuals that make magic happen that have been left in the dust, Kevin. That's who
mm,
we love and appreciate. And when we're on the warehouse floor, I love talking to my chief supply chain officers and talk strategy. But
yeah.
if we don't get on the floor where the magic happens and the sausage is being made, man, we're losing a golden opportunity to figure out how to do more with the data that these poor people are drowning in. And so
Mm,
we saw firsthand, Kevin, that these operators were drowning in data that effectively measured status, like where something is, what stage it's
okay.
in, literally like digital piles, if you will, right? And
Yeah.
they were never really using that data to steer the operation in real time. And so we built Cognitops to effectively help these individuals use data to drive flow. And so we work with companies from mid-market operators to Fortune 100 giants. And we've sat on top of every flavor of WMS you can imagine, from
Mm.
the old legacy systems, AS400s. I think it's what cockroaches and AS400s are going to survive nuclear explosion, Kevin, to the most
Yeah.
modern of WMSs. And we routinely deliver 20% productivity lifts by empowering operators to make productive decisions, right? So
Mm,
I'm really happy with what we've done over the past 7 years, starting Cognitops to really be effectively this brain for the building. Uh, and the team that we have is incredible. I think I'm probably not going to do a good job of representing like how practical and empathetical these guys are to the operator, to deploying technology that these individuals can actually use. And that's, I think, what makes us really dangerous
mm,
and a big time competitor to the big WMS incumbents that want to continue to build reports. We know where the cracks are, and
mm,
we know that if we can help operators use the data that is dug into the ground or swimming in pools of dashboards, that we can break a 40-year-old thinking cycle of
Mm.
broken paradigms and poor systems.
Yeah, absolutely, and I love that. I think that's a great mission to have, and I love how you describe the data as just these digital piles, just kind of hanging out there,
Yeah,
I guess, right?
100%.
And I think that's such an interesting thing because the more, I guess, the more technology we see coming into the industry and into the warehouse itself, like the more data is just being generated, right? And the more the consumer is
Absolutely.
demanding, the more data we're trying to generate to meet those demands. But I'm curious, like with all the data that's kind of surrounding and these piles, right, that are
Yes.
accumulating of the data, right? Right, where I mean, where as an industry, like, do we kind of stand right now on data? I mean, are people,
Yeah.
finally cleaning up these piles a little bit, or what is it looking like out there?
It looks like my closet, buddy. Piles of dirty laundry that I need to get to, but that's about it. It alerts you to the fact that there's dirty laundry. No, so I want to take you back a little bit to help our audience understand kind of, and I think our audience is going to appreciate the history lesson, but certainly
Hmm.
understand where we came from. So I think it was 1975, the first WMS installed by J.C. Penney.
Okay.
And it took another, I think it was like 18 or 20 years for Manhattan Associates to release their first WMS, right? And so from 93 backwards, what were these solution providers effectively competing against? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And any thought, like if you were selling WMS in 1993, uh, you know, internal inertia in organizations today are, well, we have Excel, or, we're building a
Mm-hmm.
BI. But back then, what was the inertia? What do you think it was? Like the number one reason why internal teams wouldn't go with the WMS, besides
Probably because
costs?
it
Because that's
was.
always a thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. But I imagine probably because it was a newer concept then. I imagine, right?
Yeah,
And they're probably doing stuff still on record keeping books and most things, right? And that's
bingo,
a big lift to bring that into a system. Yeah.
100%. And so we were born in the wrong time, Kevin, because had we been salespeople
Yeah.
selling WMS back then, I mean, we would have been doing snow angels and piles of money, right?
Yeah.
WMSs were competing against file cabinets, period, the
Mm,
end, right? And so you look at the best representation of a data pile. In that case, it's a physical data pile of the file cabinet. All
mm,
we've done is we've taken that construct and put it into now this digital system, right? Where it's piles and piles and piles of data, and we like to call that pile a status. And so you're going to hear that
mm.
the word status to me induces puke in my mouth a little bit. And so I think where data is right now in our industry is that, as the saying goes, most warehouses are data rich and decision poor, right? We've got more dashboards than we have dock doors.
Mm,
IT organizations are obsessed with building reports and data lakes. The number of times that I've heard of, we're building a data lake, and I don't want to be pedantic, but I'm like, okay, what are you going to do with that other than
mm.
store, like Minnesota, where I used to live? You're going to have 10,000 lakes of data,
Yeah.
another version of piles, right? So
Hmm.
but that data isn't actionable in the moment that it matters, and that's the bridge that we're trying to build. Is when it matters, how can I operationalize, use the data? And so we're still, unfortunately, from an industry perspective, and I know I'm going to probably get a lot of hate mail, but we're still designing our warehouse systems around these 1980s data concepts, literally.
Mm,
Like, and the most damaging example is really that status construct or field in a WMS, right? Status is binary. It tells
mm,
you where something is in a sequence, whether it's received or picked or shipped, but it tells you nothing about what's happening, right? Why it matters or how it affects the next hour of work. And so even the modern WMSs still treat this field as a holy grail.
Mm,
And so, unfortunately, we see it because we're plugging into modern WMSs, and boy, oh boy, do people love to put stuff in these status fields, thinking that if you just count the number of things in the status and display it to an operator, that that gives him or her the visibility they need to make the most productive decision. And that's just not the case, right? And
yeah.
so um, it's pretty sad to see. Good for us, of course, because we've got a different approach that I'm sure we're going to get into. But gosh, I have walked many warehouse floors. As we were talking about walking the
Hmm.
floor on Hoka boots, it's the only way to walk a warehouse floor is on
Yeah.
Hoka boots.
Yeah.
Shout out to my
Shout out
customer
Hoka.
Deckers.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so, um, you see these screens with a bar counting or showing you a percentage of stuff that's done.
Hmm.
Okay, what do you do with that information? And when you ask Sally, she's got a mental model, and
Mm,
then you ask the next really uncomfortable question, hopefully in front of an executive, and you say, Sally, if you win the lottery today, what happens tomorrow? And boy, oh boy, Kevin, do people get really uncomfortable when that mental model to interpret the number of statuses goes away
yeah.
because somebody won the lottery, or worse, Amazon moves down the street and pays 25% more in
Mm,
hourly wage, right? So that's where the industry is. Unfortunately, I'm very opinionated, but having seen this and still seeing it as we walk floors and implement our solution, it's either got to stop or Cognitops is going to take over the world, and I think I prefer the latter.
I'm sure you do. Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a very interesting point there about the statuses and the idea of this data in the traditional WMS sense, just kind of telling you where something is. But what does that exactly mean? And that makes me think back to the first job in my career in warehousing, where there was I think the location in the system, it was called like temp 001 or something like that, right? And when I started, and I was in inventory control, right?
Yeah.
So I would see this inventory would get stuck in this location, and in the beginning I didn't know what that was. Like, what does that
Yep.
mean, right? And it didn't fit into any of the other location nomenclature or anything like that. So I'm asking people like, where is this in the warehouse? Like, where is this in the warehouse? And there's, I don't know what that is. Or what do you mean?
It's just a
And I'm
pile
like,
of stuff, man.
well, it says we have 20 of these books there, right? Because it was a book publisher, and
Yeah.
I'm like, where are these 20 books? Like, they should be in this location. And finally, somebody explained to me like, hey, that's not a real location. Like something fired off wrong, or a task triggered
Yes.
wrong, and it just got caught in there. It's like a catch-all, basically. So you got to kind of dig in and figure out where is it actually physically, and move it out of there, basically. So, but it is interesting because like people wouldn't know that unless they actually like dug in, right, and tried to figure out like, well, what does that actually mean? And then from then
100%.
on, I knew like, okay, well, that is like some kind of error, something went wrong, right, and that is somewhere else, but then that has to continue to be explained to other people. So tell us a little bit about kind of this data, right, that's getting just a status on it, or location, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Um, how are you taking that data and making it into something that is more usable, more interpretable? I guess, is that a word? Interpretable,
Yeah, I think so.
and
I was
actionable,
a
right?
math
And,
major, so it sounds good to me. So,
yeah. So how are you taking that data and
yeah.
like and taking it to the next step?
Yeah, in terms of the data that people are still missing, the two data that are most important and we have missed by a moonshot, Kevin, are context and time,
Mm,
right? Warehouses don't operate on status. They operate on a state of flow, moving left to right over the spectrum of time, right? And so if we can't understand the warehouse in time, then we're gonna measure it, but we're not gonna steer it, right? And so if we can get a sense of timing, then we get a sense of, or an understanding of, when will work be ready, right?
mm,
How is it going to impact downstream tasks potentially create bottlenecks, whether there's a disruption that's going to snowball into missed SLAs. Like the questions that operators ask normally don't start with what is the status of X versus when will I finish, this specific thing, right?
Hmm.
And so that's the data that matters. It's temporal. It's start and finish predictions. It's bottleneck emergence times. It's labor readiness windows. It's shift start plans to say our data, for example, Kevin, tells us that the correlation between that first hour of productivity to the success of a shift is enormous. I mean, it is basically setting your destiny in motion. If you start poorly, the likelihood of some nasty overtime or chaos that's going to drive efficiencies down and your costs up is highly likely, right? And
Right.
so, if we can get into understanding context and time in our industry, in our systems, then I think it's winner, winner, chicken dinner, right?
Mm.
But because the WMS vendors and derivative systems have always anchored their data model on status on the piles, IT organizations have never built data models that capture, prioritize those time-based signals. So you can see how it's kind of like hashtag collusion of WMS
Yeah.
data models, IT people wanting to deliver on some reports and dashboards, and all you get are fancier piles with pretty speedometers
Mm.
and bar charts and histograms, right? And so without time and context, you are never going to be able to forecast, and you're certainly not going to be able to rebalance your operation in real time when, as I love to say, there are two derivatives of this saying that I love to say, depending on my audience. One is, if man plans, God laughs,
Mm.
right? And boy, does he love laughing at us in the warehouse, Kevin. You know it. I know it. We've experienced it. We're like, man, let's
Yeah,
go,
yeah.
team. You do the stretch and flex at the
Yep.
start of a shift. Let's go. And then, holy cow, does the stuff hit the fan? And then, of course, the other one is, the philosopher Mike Tyson. Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth, right? So,
Yeah.
so time and context are two critical data that remain fossilized in deep extinction in our industry, and Cognitops is doing everything possible to Jurassic Park those bad boys.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a great way to put it there. And looking at it, because there is so much data, right? And it's one thing to have the data, but then it's like, what are you going to do with it, right? And that's if you don't know what to do with it, or you don't know how to frame it in a way that allows you to take that action or go the right path, then it's kind of pointless to have it all in the first place, right? So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about kind of how are you tapping to AI from a data perspective, and how are you leveraging that with your customers to be able to take this to another level, even further.
Yeah. I think it's certainly predictions are a thing, right? Forecasting the future, predicting outcomes, and then prescribing what you should do about it are fancy ways to say, how can I, the solution provider, help this operator make a decision, right?
Mm.
And so that's what we're trying to get into is decision support. However, it comes from the solution. Kevin, we have we keep track of all of our users, and we know time on the screens, time on solution, what they're, viewing most and least. And our customer success team has, depending on the recency of the activation, anywhere from weekly operational reviews to monthly. And then, of course, we have our standard quarterly business reviews with executives where we review the roadmap and we talk about
Mm.
the product and how it's delivering value. Um, and so because we see all of this data, we're often surprised that some of the most pedestrian views that we have are the most popular.
Mm.
And so, like for example, our own perspective of those digital piles, we call it progress. How are you progressing in all of your pick modules? How are you progressing to ship according to your SLAs? How are you progressing to empty your inbound dock, right? To make sure that you service inventory to get the replenishments done, et cetera. And it's a very simple view that doesn't have a lot of whiz bang, AI at the fore. But Kevin, gosh, it is probably the one of the top three most used functionalities in Cognitops. And so
Really?
our job isn't to say I'm going to shove AI and predictions, forecasts, prescriptions down your throat. It's I'm going to meet you where you are, and I'm going to
Mm.
give you the data that you need to make the decision. And so, what's the decision? Well, then that's where Cognitops shines, is getting on the floor on our hokas and asking those very important questions to discover is it a labor forecast that tells you for the entire year this is how much labor you're going to need across your entire buildings? That's a different persona than a supervisor that really only cares about, like, am I going to hit my throughput target so I can send everybody home so we can go see the Houston Astros tonight, right? And so when we think about AI, and derivatives like machine learning, we want to think about first decisions, right? So
Mm.
dashboards are rear view mirrors. We all know that. They show you what happened. They quantify piles and they tell you, Alex, you need to do laundry because your pile is growing. Decisions are the steering wheels, right? And so they change where the facility is going. That's what we want to focus on. Operators, philosophically, for us, they don't need more metrics. They just need that decision support that says, here's what's about to happen, here's why, here are the best moves that you can make right now. And so that's the gap we close, and we turn the whole model sideways and put time, not status, at the center of our
Mm.
modeling exercises, so we can make those recommendations, tie them to future events, and allow you to adapt. And so we love to call our AI strategy a practical one.
Mm.
I love meeting with investors, and especially now when everybody is kind of mouth breathing and really excited about generative AI and large language
Yeah.
models, and how can you build and vibe code the next fill in the blank enterprise system.
Yeah.
That's what they're excited about. Not the, hey, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to take all of your historical data and all data from the Cognitops activation to today, and I'm going to tell you what your labor needs are for the next 365 days.
Mm.
Investors, they're like, sounds boring, right? That's a holy grail for us, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
meeting
yeah.
these operators where it's like, wow, I can hit bullseye to the extent
Mm.
that any forecast is bullseye. Our guess is
Yeah.
just a more scientific one, right? So using let's call it machine learning, not to put ourselves in the cool kids table of all the cool AI companies. Simple things like forecasting
Mm.
resource needs, predicting if you're going to have a good day or bad day, and then prescribing to you by way of simulating outcomes and recommending actions, like, hey, if you do this, you're going to achieve success, or you're going to be less stuck. Is our very empathetic and practical application of AI, right?
Mm.
And so we're not the sexiest, unlike you, right? Love the sign there in the back. Warehouses are definitely sexy, but
You know
we
it.
are,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. We certainly see AI as a practical accelerant for the industry. But if we go in, full tilt to try to create a new form factor in the operator's mind, where now they're going to be able to speak to a solution, you're going to get some pushback. Now, we may
Mm.
eventually evolve there. I know that I think you may have spoken to someone that is trying to bring a chat-like interface to the warehouse floor. I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah.
But when you're competing against the digital file cabinet, the
Mm.
bar is so low, bud, that if you just give operators the right visibility, right, that's gold.
Mm.
Certainly, the future may be, autonomous robots, and we're all out of a job because you'll be able to simulate every possible outcome and not worry about Taylor Swift sponsoring your product, and all of a sudden you've got a million units to fulfill today, right?
Yeah.
That day is far away. I think I'm not going to be here when that day comes. So let's
Mm.
be practical about AI, and we'd love to talk about that. It's unsexy for investors, but it's very sexy for our customers that are begging for the operational like ease of their data. So
Mm. Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a great way to look at it, and a way to kind of level set it too. Because I think, like you said, I think people are like, we got to do something big, right, with AI, right? But it doesn't have to be that big, like you said, like, and gave some examples there. And I think, oftentimes we get caught up in that a little bit, that there's these big innovative shiny things happening, like how do I do that, how do I get there, and maybe like I'm discouraged because I don't think I can get there, right? But there's all these
yes.
other things like in between that can be done to really help you. So I guess to kind of wrap it up here, I mean, when you look at the side where you have these digital piles, right, of data, as you referred to in the beginning, and then you look at getting to this next level, utilizing some machine learning or just some overall understanding of the data with Cognitops, and tell us kind of like what is gonna set you apart there, right? Because I think in some instances, people with these digital piles, right, I mean, they're kind of like, well, we've been doing it this way for so long, and it's
Yes.
we're still in business, right? So like, so why do we even want to get to the other side? Like how can that actually set you apart as a business overall?
Yeah, gosh. I don't have a good answer for corporate inertia.
Sure.
That is, if I could figure out how to help customers, specifically IT organizations or operators that have built some really fantastic, like 1% of 1%er type Power BI tools that they use on the daily, that there is a better way, we'd be doing, you know, snow angels and piles of money again.
Mm.
But that inertia is the toughest obstacle for really any innovation, not just Cognitops. It's challenging for Cognitops because we are still um, trying to tackle a latent pain versus an acute pain.
Mm.
Although this has to be categorized as acute, because until you walk the warehouse floor, you're going to think, well, I can automate myself out of this problem, right? Let's go install an auto store, or let's go install some robotic dogs or drones or whatever it may be, AGVs, AMRs, and life will be good. The number of my customers that have tried to automate themselves to the promised land are many, and the
Mm.
number of customers that have succeeded in arriving to the promised land by nuts and bolts are zero. And so
Mm.
I think we're starting to get to a point where there has been a ton of investment in point solutions and innovations and automation, and the auto stores and exotechs and all those that are fantastic operators and fantastic solutions, but they do a specific thing. They're not going to help your operators operate, right? And so we believe that what sets Cognitops apart is that I don't have to sell you.
Mm.
My customers do that for me, right? The reason I've been traveling so much is visiting customer sites with prospects, and I just sit back, arms folded like this, and kind of smile like I'm watching a comedy movie, just thinking about, like, this is awesome. My
Yeah.
customers are my best salespeople, because they're telling these these operators, like, what are you doing here? Why are you waiting? Get moving on this. It's a low lift activation. It takes anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks to
Mm,
get Cognitops live, and you're here, futzing around and talking about, God knows what, right?
mm,
So what sets us apart is our customer base, the love that they have for the value that we deliver, how maniacal we are in making sure that we are empathetic and practical in delivering solutions for them that deliver value. And the only way they deliver value is by focusing on that core persona of the person on the floor. And then we've been built since 2018 for this modern tech stack. Like
mhm,
our architecture was built for AI. And so through divine providence, here we are, right? And so I think
mm,
the warehouse industry has been stuck in a bad habit for 40 years, treating data as an archive instead of a steering system. We've talked about the status field, and it's like the perfect symbol of this mindset. It's simple, it's convenient, it's lazy, and almost completely useless for making the next decision. And so we posit that these dashboards won't get you to the flow. Somebody may be distracted and say, I have it, but ultimately they're going to realize that analytics won't get you to your SLAs, to your performance targets. Only these predictive, time-based, contextual decision support systems will. And so if your WMS or IT team says otherwise, um, they're not running your warehouse, they're running the reporting queue, right?
mm.
And so
Yeah.
that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, bud.
All right, yeah, and I think that's great that your customers are so happy that they're telling your other potential customers to what are you waiting
Indeed.
for, basically, right? And I think that's a good testament to what you've built, and I think definitely want to get a harness on that data and be able to use it in a actionable way, and one that makes sense, and you've made it easy to be able to do that. I think that's fantastic. So really appreciate you coming on the show today, Alex, and
Been
telling
great.
us kind of like the latest, and telling us how to clean up our digital piles
Yeah,
that
man.
we
Do your
have
laundry, Kevin. All right.
accumulated. Yeah, yeah. I do need to do laundry, actually. So it's a good reminder. But yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's great to look at the way you, or see the way you look at things. So if people are interested in connecting with you, or learning more about Cognitops, what's the best way to do that?
Best way to do it is email me, alex@cognitops.com, and I will be happy to reach out, connect you to my colleagues. I'm, just the co-founder and the CEO. I've got very smart people that work alongside me that are going to treat you right and make sure that, we align on the pain with the value that we deliver. So Alex, ALEX, at cognitops.com. Reach out, give a holler. I'd love to hear from you.
All right, get in contact with that man, and we'll put that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well as in the show notes here. So, Alex, thank you very much for joining me on the show today.
Appreciate you, bud.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video here on our YouTube channel, The New Warehouse Podcast, and I appreciate you tuning in. If you liked what you saw, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and if you like this video in particular, make sure you like it as well. And if you want to get this great t-shirt that you see in the video behind me, Warehouses Are Sexy, head to warehousesAreSexy.com and get your own.